So everyone is everyone's like, what year is everybody?
Second
Feel
year.
feel free to unmute and talk and turn cameras on too.
Second year, first year, second year. Okay.
Third year.
I guess that makes sense. You can't really be a fourth year right now. You wouldn't be listening to this. Well, you could because you might want to see what your specialty options are. Um, Marla, do you want to start? Do you want me to start about?
I could start. So I guess just to give like a little bit of background. So I went to med school in Virginia, did my residency at Georgetown, and now I'm here with Sean doing spinal cord injury fellowship at Stanford. Um, I initially came to do PM&R because I wanted to do sports medicine. I didn't even really understand what inpatient rehab was at all, or neuro rehab until my fourth year of med school, where I did some rotations and I really started to like it. But as I kind of like progressed through my residency, especially after my internship and my second year, just really fell in love with neuro rehab. Um, I think one of the reasons I like spinal cord injury so much is because I still get, you see everything in spinal cord injury. I still get all the MSK I could ever want. Did a carpal tunnel injection today. So you still get all the MSK you want. But on top of that, you get, the autonomics, you get, the functionality, the neuro stuff. Patients with spinal cord injuries, it's a very high number of them that come with traumatic brain injuries as well. So we get that kind of complicated picture. A lot of them also have polytrauma, lots of fractures and stuff. So I find that really fun. And so while it was really hard to kind of, I mean, most of us, I assume, are very type A and like have our whole lives planned out from day one. It was a really hard thing to switch from wanting to do sports medicine to wanting to do neuro rehab, but I couldn't be happier. I think we can get into it a little bit later, but I think the opportunities are way more vast for us. Our ability to kind of practice wherever we want is really much more realistic than some of my sports medicine and pain colleagues. Um, and yeah, that's just a little bit of background on me so you guys can kind of get to know me a little bit. You want to go, Sean?
Yeah, thank you, Marla. Yeah, so I'm Sean. I went to Berkeley undergrad, UCLA for med school, then residency at Northwestern, Shirley Ryan. Um, so when I was a med student, I feel like inpatient was always really intimidating for me because it was like the most complex stuff happening. They had multiple problems. Obviously, that's why they were admitted as an inpatient. And like I was like, dude, there's no way in hell I'm gonna do anything inpatient when I grow up. Like clinic, they came in with like headache. Like I can deal with that. Like they're obviously not actively dying because they're walking into clinic, and that all of a sudden more appealing. And UCLA doesn't really have its own PM&R. It has the VA where their PM&R program is based, and there you see a lot of pain stuff. And that's pretty much mostly what I saw in PM&R. So okay, like that's cool stuff. I like the musculoskeletal system too. All those exam maneuvers we learned as a med student, like your Hawkins and posterior drawer and all that kind of stuff. I thought it was kind of cool it's like you could do something physically, come up with a diagnosis. I liked all that stuff as well. That kind of got me on board. But I was thinking like child psych, maybe derm, a lot of stuff too. What I liked the most kind of about what I saw of PM&R, which is different than what I'm in now. And I guess the reason why I'm going to tell you that is because I want you to know what you're getting yourself into. That's very important for me to communicate that to all of you. And it's kind of hard with PM&R in a way because it's so broad, but that's kind of what's beautiful about it. The thing I like the most is you had time with patients and you felt like what you did with their quality of life actually mattered a lot. Like you felt like you made a change. That sounds very simple, but that little fact that makes you walk home and tell whoever you with, like, you know what? I freaking did something. I did a maneuver. I diagnosed this. We made this plan. You felt good about it. It was tangible, right? So I came into residency feeling like I'm going to do outpatient stuff for sure. I thought I was going to do pain. And not to slam anything. If you like pain, you like whatever, that's great. It's telling you my perspective. That's what you're here for, right? when you do pain or sports, people come to you when they're unhappy. And the second they're happy, they don't come back to you anymore because you cured it. Then no one pays their copay to be like, hey, bro, like, you really helped me out, man. Like, that's it. So I feel like you're always people who are kind of like not doing great. And in spinal, what I realized in residency for spinal cord injury, for example, it was inpatient. My favorite part of every day as a third year med student was like, when you get assigned to somebody and you stay with them for a while, if there's a rock patient, and you get to know them. Like, the one thing you can do as a med student better than anybody else is chum it up with your patients because you keep seeing them. You got some time, right? I love when you walked in and they were like, they're like, Hunter, my man, what's up? And like you have like an inside joke together with each other, and right, the team's like, hey, you're clearly hitting off. And you're like, yeah, I am, because we're buds now. That was so well represented in inpatient PM&R because they, like in neuro rehab, because they stay for a while and they need you. Something happened, they had a stroke or a brain injury or something like that. Spinal cord injury in particular, like, why did I go with that one? The injury is usually from neck or below. Usually they're cognitively intact. Yeah, they can have brain injuries as well, but you get what I'm saying, right? That connection with the people was like the biggest return bang for your buck in inpatient PM&R, especially spinal cord. And after they discharge, they keep coming back to see you, not just when things go wrong. You just keep tip-topping them. You do their Botox injections. It's like just constant reward and gratification, feeling like you really make a big difference. And like, I've never seen more patients bring my attendings like snacks or flowers, or like, they picked up some fajitas along the way too. It's like, it was very feel good. And if you're good at connecting with people and reading the room and really being there for you for highs and lows, it feels great being in this specialty. So I'll stop that there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can definitely take your guys' questions. Obviously, like Sean mentioned, you're going to get a biased review from the two of us. We both chose the same specialty. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm just trying to think of like some of the things that come up a lot. I think a lot of people, Sean really did a good job of talking about this too. I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion that like inpatient rehab is so much more, the lifestyle is way harder, and that you can't really, doing clinic, the lifestyle is better. And like, let's all be honest here, none of us went into PM&R to work 100 hours a week. So, we all value quality of life, as everyone should. But in both of our experiences, I think that in residency, inpatient can be more difficult, but in actual practice, inpatient is probably easier than being an outpatient attending. The amount of patients that you're seeing in a day is probably half. You get to know the patients, like Sean was saying, and kind of can anticipate any issues that are coming up. And at this point, most people take big PM&R programs, the inpatient and the outpatient docs take call anyways. So you're not really reducing your amount of call. So I think it's just important to kind of keep that in mind and really think about when you're going through like your PM&R rotations and stuff, not only, kind of as you get through, not only is this like what I actually, what would be easiest, but what I would actually like doing on a day-to-day basis. Because working as a physician is hard, and you're going to have to work 8 to 5 regardless. So, if you actually like doing what you're doing during that time, it makes a big difference. And I really like the collaborative part of being on the inpatient side. We meet with the physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech, social work, case managers, like every single day. So you have all this backup, all this knowledge that's around you to kind of help solve these issues. It's not just you. Your patient comes in, like Sean was saying, they have a headache and you give them a medicine. You got 8 people that are seeing these patients. And I think it just makes a big difference. Yeah, I think, yeah. So I just would encourage you guys to kind of really see like what you actually enjoy about PM&R, what you actually enjoy, type of pathology you like, and think about that a little bit. Also, we can talk a little bit maybe about this later, because I'm talking a whole bunch, but different practice settings. Being a neuro rehab doc opens up your opportunities a little bit more, or being a general physiatrist opens up your opportunities a little bit more than if you only want to do MSK or pain. Meaning that you could work in different settings: outpatient, private practice, academics, subacute rehabs, acute rehabs. You could even do, if you like a mix of inpatient and outpatient, you could do that. You can do, like Sean, I think you're going to be having like a half day of outpatient a week at Rancho. So you have that option. It kind of opens a lot more doors for you. And in general, the job opportunities are much, much, much more. There's just way more opportunities for people that go into neuro rehab or general physiatry, especially in kind of those cities that everybody wants to be in.
Any questions before? I just wanted to like pause. Please just like shoot, guys. We were not you long ago.
Yeah, feel free to speak up or raise your hand or whichever, however you're open for you.
I'll wait a few seconds before I say anything else.
I'll kick
Every
it
year
off.
I say I was not you guys long ago, it like gets longer and longer. Like my students stay the same age as I age. That sucks.
Feel the
Nothing
same way.
yet.
I'll kick it
I had
off.
a question.
Go ahead, Pedro.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have my camera on here. I'm from KCU, Kansas City University. I was just wondering third years we have our like kind of required rotations, and then fourth years we, right, I mean, you guys know all this, you get to choose a little bit more. Do you have enough time during fourth year to like really get into PM&R and see if you like it? Or would you recommend like trying to do some shadowing? I'm a second year right now.
I think it probably depends on your program and like when your electives are and things like that. I think doing at least, one elective in your third year is probably going to be pretty high yield for you. There's other really good ways to get involved. Sean is really pretty high up guy in the AAP, which is one of our PM&R organizations. And so even just going to a conference or like joining some of the lectures, there's a lot of really good educational activities through there. Can be helpful to just give you kind of an idea of like what actually PM&R is. If you can find someone in your community that's like a PM&R doc and is willing to let you shadow, for sure, go for it. I think my memory of third year was that it was pretty tough just taking like after the exams after like every single rotation month and all that. But if you have the time and the energy, then definitely it's not going to hurt you. And it also helps to like be in different practice settings and get exposed as much as you can, because a lot of residency programs will have you just kind of in, academia in like acute rehab, and there's just so much more to PM&R. So if you're able to like find some other types of settings too, that might be helpful.
Yeah, if you're early, like a MS1 or MS2, if you can find a way to just do a few days of shadowing, like I got to like pick a longitudinal clerkship as it too, like kind of like a little mini elective that I checked in maybe once every month. Even that little bit, if you show up when you're writing, like I like to operate by thinking about the next step. For you guys, that's residency, right? Or a step later, because you want to kind of like optimize yourself for getting, you pick a residency or to try to get to your next step, to be strategic. Doing something that you can write on your CV. And then when you're talking to an interviewer saying, actually, I've been thinking about PM&R since I was an MS2 is useful. Even if you just shadowed like 2 days, if you can find something to do, the reality is you got to be strategic about your applications, right? So you got to play your cards right. If you can find something to do, whether it's shadowing even a clinic in the community or at your academic center, whatever it is, just do something to say that you got your head, like you have empiric evidence, you got your nose in there early. Easy things to do also besides that. Marla mentioned leadership. We have AAP, which is for that, and we have AAP and R, the two main orgs. They have conferences. If you can get a case accepted into there, or you can even just go and show up, that's easy to say. You've been involved in the field as well. If you can't find something to do, ask around for a case. Even if it's not a PM&R doctor, there's a lot of stuff that happens in inpatient medicine that qualifies. Or if you want to do a very simple, I also people this, a very simple retrospective study. That's the easiest thing you could pretty much do is just open up some cases. Like, for example, just ask your attending who may be medicine, can I do this simple study with your backing? And present it to a poster and just say, like, I want to look at people who got PT and those who didn't and see if there's any relationship to where they got discharged. You can do that as a med student. Just pick like 20 patients, right? But that's something you could like present as an abstract too. So it's like, I guess the lesson there is it's actually not that hard to find something that you could do. It seems daunting though, but if you want to be strategic, these are ways to do it. And if you have more questions about what to do to look good, on top of that, there's volunteerism. I think PM&R values volunteerism too. If you want to really get a good PM&R angle, if you can find an adaptive sport thing happening around where you're at and to help referee, that looks very sexy. So just different venues to show that you're interested in PM&R. So any other questions about how to look good or next steps or what life can look like in residency, let us know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess I'm trying to get a sense of before I kind of put my energy and time into those things, you know, if it's something that I want to get involved in more, right? But I guess you never know until you're in it. So I do appreciate your responses. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
PM&R does look favorably on research. It's not PM&R, by the way. I don't want you to feel like if you do like,
Gotcha.
I thought between Durham, Charles Act, and PM&R, I knew Durham was the most competitive. So I geared my research as a med student towards Durham, and nobody scoffed at me when I applied to PM&R about that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, and if there is like a PM&R doc at your med school or something like that, definitely kind of sit down, maybe chat with them or somebody that's connected, and just like kind of get different people's opinions on you know what they do, and see if they'll be willing to let you shadow, stuff like that.
I'm going to type my email in the chat in case somebody has to leave early and you do want to ask questions later, stay in touch. You can say that and email me anytime. I'm sending it just to Drake Short, I bet.
I've got
Okay.
a quick question for you.
Go for it.
Going back to you saying that a lot of places will smack you in an academic center and not really give you the full, well-rounded view of exactly what PM&R is. With as little time as we kind of have, how did you two do it, and how would you recommend we do it to kind of filter through what programs we really want, and ones that kind of fit how we see ourselves progressing through a PM&R career?
Great question.
That's a really good question, and it's a really tough question, and I think it's going to be different for everyone. I think for me, it was really important that the program was well-rounded. And what I mean by that is that, like, there were some programs where you would go and your whole first year was just inpatient. You would never see like a MSK, anything until you're a PGY3, and then you never did inpatient again. And it was like the outpatient stuff was so strong, the sports was so strong, and the inpatient was so weak. And even though I wanted to do sports medicine, to me, like, I wanted to be a physiatrist. So it was really important to me that there was a good balance between inpatient, outpatient rotations and the strength of those rotations. One way you can look at that is to see the recent grads and see what they go into. And that'll give you a little bit of an idea. So if you want to do general physiatry and everybody that leaves that program is doing fellowship, that's just something to kind of read into. If everybody from that program is doing sports and pain and you want to do neuro rehab, it doesn't give you a great, like, perfect information, but it gives you some. And then there's usually some really good stuff on, like, I think it's AAPM&R that does it, Sean, where they do like instead of going to the conferences where you kind of go around to the tables and you talk to the program directors, they actually do like online versions where you can go into like Zooms like this and you can talk to the programs, and they'll usually have like residents and stuff. It's usually the chiefs, so take that with a grain of salt because they're going to be their best residents probably, but like you can go into the Zoom room and you can just chat with like program director or residents. They can tell you about the program, like what's their favorite part of the program, weaknesses, stuff like that. So that can be really helpful, especially for programs that are kind of out of your area. And then look at the rotations, and if you're interested in like working in like a VA or something like that, or working at a subacute rehab, look at the rotation schedule at the program and just see that those are part of the opportunity. Because if if you're thinking you want to be a VA doctor and then you don't rotate in the VA during your residency, it's gonna be really hard to get a job in a VA. So just like little simple things like that can make a big difference. It's a really hard question, because in PM&R, everybody for the large majority is so nice. And so you're just like, oh, this program's so nice, everybody there's so nice, but like, is it actually gonna funnel me into like what I need to do? I would say like probably the top third of programs at least is really very similar. And the differences are just like, where do you want to live, and like small little things between the programs.
I agree. Those are great points. One tip I think is when you're interviewing at places, if one place says like keeps touting that they're really strong in something, that was always a red flag to me, which is code for we are deficient in other areas. They just keep that in mind. I felt like that was a secret code, or if somebody has to really advertise how they're really good at one or two things in areas, that's not an issue. Programs that are like, well, I mean, and they can't give you an answer like, I mean, really, we got a good this and that, and the doctor, whatever, like that is as you know, as a leader in that, and they can't really give you like a simple, straightforward answer. That's actually a good thing, because it means they just can't really pick something because they're globally strong. Just like a tip for you going forward.
That's such a good point. And ask them, like, if you think you want to do spinal cord injury as a, like, that's what you want to do in your career, then ask them, like, hey, what's your exposure of spinal cord injury here? Like, do you have inpatient and outpatient? Do you have, like, how acute is most of your patients traumatic, or are you just getting, like, some, like, cervical myelopathy? Like, what type of patient load are you getting? And definitely, like, just ask that up front. There's nothing wrong with asking that. And I don't think, in my experience, like even doing interviews as a resident for med students, like it never made me feel like bad. I always appreciated that the person like wanted to know exactly what they were getting into, which made me think that they were kind of going to be like a good hard worker, because they actually like wanted to know what they'd be learning. So I think you should just kind of ask.
Yeah, actually, coming from like at Northwestern, we have a night where we sit and look at every med student together, and we talk. If we did interact with them, we talk about things that we liked and saw. People who asked questions like that didn't look like they were being testy. If anything, it made us think that they knew what they're getting themselves into. And one thing I've heard from many program directors is we want to know what you're getting yourself into. Hence why if you have two electives, if you can spin it, so one is an inpatient medicine, and one's an outpatient one, that just it's not like it's a problem if you don't do that. So things happen, but then it just kind of helps you show what you're getting yourself into. I'm going to make one little statement about something too. Inpatient rehab, right? Everyone's like, oh, sports so sexy, pain so sexy, blah, blah. Yeah, it is kind of in a way too. But nobody gives enough credit to inpatient rehab. Think about this. As I would not be doing my job if I did not tell you this part, for why it's so sweet. You get the perks of inpatient, which is you get to know people. They stay for a while, especially in PM&R. They stay for a while, so you really connect with them, right? You get to know them. It's not just this rapid admission, discharge, which is stressful and a lot of work, right? They stay longer. It feels good. You get to know them. You build great relationships. But you get the perks of inpatient medicine too. I want to think about something for a bit. I can't make a decision right away. I want to call a consultant. We'll sit on it. We'll see how things go. I want to just take a break right now. I want to go to the bathroom. I want to watch YouTube and disengage. Like if I want to work really fast, my kid's got to play at 4. I'm going to get there early around quickly. Like you can do that. What killed me is in clinic, no matter how fast I work, I can't change the fact that my 4 o'clock is sitting there at 4, then a 4:15 and a 4:30, and one person's late, domino effect, and there's a pile of notes. Like I just can't. If you can, props to you. There are definitely perks of outpatient as well, but you get the perks of inpatient. You're doing all your doctor stuff. You're managing, infection, starting antibiotics, glucose, diabetes, whatever, blood pressure, and all that stuff. And all the PM&R inpatient stuff too, like autonomic dysreflexia and storming in your brain injury patients. You feel badass because that you're the expert on that. But they're also stable enough to be in rehab. That is the key. It's the perks of inpatient without the acute stress that I hated when I was on wards or ICU. Because the second they're too sick to qualify, they go. So it's like beautiful to me. It's this beautiful sweet spot that nobody talks about. And I want you to just know about it and go into PM&R, which I hope you do, thinking about that being on your radar as well. That's just, I had to say that.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I've literally been thinking about that. I just finished internal medicine, and that was all I could think about was like, I'm terrified of someone trying to die on me, but I love like being inpatient with these people. Like, man, exactly.
There you go.
I worked like 2.5 years before I got into med school at an inpatient rehab as a tech, and I love the love for inpatient rehab. It's such an awesome setting. It's exactly everything that it's like the best things of all of it without the worst things of all of it. And I also appreciate the answers very much.
I appreciate the thank you, and I love the comments here too, Vanessa. I agree. And I got wait, see, 2 questions. For applying for OAs, what are good things schools are looking for when picking students? And I won't have completed a PM&R rotation by the time you're applying. Lots of places. First of all, lots of places do not have home programs. Like a lot do not have home PM&R. You will not get looked down upon for not having experience before your away rotations. What are the reasons why we chose our programs? I'll get to why we chose our programs. And then as for the part, what is my take on aways and what things look good for aways? A lot of stuff here I want to try to give you a concise and a concise answer for. I think the things that look good for aways are honestly the same generic things I don't want to bore you with that you already know are going to look good for getting into residency, as far as I know. There's nothing extra special about that. And honestly, you don't have a ton of control over it. It's kind of just like if you it is a bit the luck of the draw. As for the question about should you do aways, this is my take. And I'll hand off to Marla in a second here. I'm sorry, Marla. If you feel comfortable with your application on paper, I felt like I looked good on paper, and I honestly didn't feel like I was like kick ass enough to like. I was not on medicine, man. As a student with like freaking 6 patients, just killing it, right? Like, but like my scores look good and my research, all right. So I was like, I'm a paper kind of guy. I look good on paper because aways are very make or break. If you're not killing it, it's you better go there and kill it. If not, you wasted your time and money, which is very sad being over there. Whereas if you feel like you're maybe on paper, you're not so, but you really want to gun for this program or this, this caliber of place, aways are your chance. And we've had students who like, they killed it so much. And I can tell you what we looked for. I guess the synopsis is they were present. We were not like, where did they go? They were just there. They kept asking, what can I do? And they closed the loop. Before we had to ask, they took notes, even not on their patients. Hey, I'll call from Mr. Smith. I'll call their person. And they got back to us all the time. And they made sure we knew that they were on top of it. And they were just eager. That was the single biggest thing that in our meetings were like, they're eager. Everyone we said this about, we vouched for, came to Northwestern. So it's like empirically proven that this stuff is extremely impressive to everybody. If you know you're that kind of person, then those aways work to your advantage. So it just depends on your app and how strong you feel about it and how good you feel like you are clinically and just, I'm okay staying there till 6 p.m. and being on the whole time.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a magic potion for who gets aways. In my understanding, it's just kind of like, I don't even know that the program directors really even look at the applications like a whole lot and compare, like to actually get an away rotation. I think it's more just like when you apply and who kind of is first. And then remember that these programs, a lot of them have to take a certain number of their home med students. So like it's just harder when you're coming from outside to get an away. But I definitely think trying to target the away programs that you're really interested in that program for residency is super important. Nobody's gonna care. Just bouncing off of what Sean said, no one cares like how much PM&R knowledge you have. We all assume that you know absolutely nothing about PM&R. So if you know anything, like that's awesome, but way more important than that is just like your willingness to be part of the team, your willingness to like be excited about being there, asking questions like Sean was saying. If you guys are like learning something, you see a patient with something interesting you didn't know about, look it up and bring something to rounds the next day, and don't be afraid to bring it up. So like say for example, you see a patient that has critical illness neuropathy and you've never heard of that, and you see it on rounds, kind of gloss over it, whatever. Then you go home and you read about it. The next day you see the same patient, but nobody says anything about their neuropathy. Still speak up and be like, hey, I was really excited about seeing this diagnosis. I had never seen it before. So I like read a little bit about it and I thought this was super interesting. I just wanted to share. Everyone's going to be pumped about that because I guarantee your resident doesn't know what it is either. So now you just like help them out because they don't have to be asked some question they don't know something about. So definitely read about it, enjoy it. bring that to rounds, because it shows that you're academic and you want to learn.
That is such a good tip. That, oh my God, it's simple enough. People don't do that. You all
Yeah,
can.
no one
That's
does it.
great, Marla.
And it comes along when you're a resident too. Like people stop doing it when you're a resident, but just as important, if not more important, and builds a good team atmosphere, which is super important, PM&R. The question, Josephine, that you had about why we chose our respective programs. So I guess we can talk a little bit about our residency programs. So Sean and I are at the same fellowship, and we did different residency programs. But I would say in a lot of ways are pretty similar programs. So I chose my program. Location was super important to me, although that has changed quite a bit, because I'm from Philadelphia and I wanted to be close to home, and now I live in California. So everything changes, but that was big, and you shouldn't gloss over that. I think that's really important. You have to live in this place for 3 to 4 years. I also wanted to go to a categorical program. So for those that aren't familiar, PM&R has both advanced programs and categorical programs. And what that means is either the internship is included in the match in the program, or it's not included and you have to do a separate internship. Some programs, like at least when I went through it, like for example, Emory, and I think RIC also, where Sean went, they'll have a mix. So they'll have some categorical spots and some advanced spots. So some people will be there for the 4 full years, and then other people will do their internship somewhere else. And I really just didn't want to move. So I really wanted to be at a program where I would be there and do my internship and continue through training. I think there's positives to that, obviously, and then there's negatives to that. Having trained in different places is always a good thing. So it's just kind of what you're interested in. So that was important to me. And then also, like I mentioned before, I really wanted to go to a well-rounded program, somewhere that I felt like I would get a good education in anything that I wanted to do. And I'm glad I did, because I completely changed what I wanted to do while I was in residency, which I think says a lot about the program. And then there was one more point that I wanted to make that I can't remember. I don't know. You can go ahead, Sean. I'm sure I'll remember it.
I said about that red flag thing. If somebody says we're really, really good at paying, I didn't get that at Northwestern. And I said, you want to think one step forward. I approached, like when I was a med student, I approached my rankings for residency thinking about the step after that, which sounds like it's very early. But I'm the kind of guy who wants to always stack the deck as much as my favor as possible, because I knew I wanted to get jobs back in Southern California, where my family's from, which I just did. And to do that, it's like I wanted to have a powerful name and powerful training to my pedigree, because that would carry me forward to the fellowship that I may or may not want to do, and the specialty that I'm not sure I want to do yet. I wanted, like Marla said, I wanted no closed doors, because then maybe I didn't know I want to do SCI. That's extremely valuable. You can't undo not getting exposed to something, and just like that just shuts off a door you never know you would have liked, and you don't want to take that risk, in my opinion, if you can help it. Let's see, alumni also, to an extent too, Shirley Ryan has a lot of people, or Northwestern, who graduate from there, and they're alumni everywhere, and that connection is very strong too. My big fear, and maybe you'll think about this, it's worth saying, I was in California my whole life, and then I did residency in Chicago. My whole thing was like, do I stay local at a place that maybe is not going to challenge me as much, but it's comfortable to me, family's close by, and maybe I can build my local connections and get a local job there? Or do I bite the bullet and go someplace that's really far, cold as hell, and then try to get back? And you know what I chose? I would always pick, if I had to do it once, pick the best training. You can't go back and do residency again. And my biggest fear was, I don't want to be an attending and have to learn PM&R as an attending. I want to learn that shit. I want to learn it in residency. I want to be an attending and just learn how the EMR works at that place, and like who I talk to, who my case manager is, just that stuff, right? But like the knowledge stuff I wanted to have down. So to me, it was like no brainer. Go to a rigorous place. But then this is the worry. Am I sacrificing being local to where I want to end up and making those connections? And to that point, I would still go to the best training. I would just do that. This is what I did. I put in work connecting with people in the area at conferences. When I looked at the rehab hospitals around the Orange County, LA, San Diego area, and when I would kind of look up people there and I'd reach out at conferences and I'd be like, hey, you're Chris Budakian at Cal Rehab. They don't know me, but I'm Sean. And I did that multiple times. I know somebody at every single rehab hospital in SoCal because of that. So if you can do that, you get the benefit of top tier training, plus you earn the connections yourself. And to me, it's a little price to pay to just have to put a little bit of extra work, into making those connections. But I like to have it all and I want you guys, my advice is to have every opportunity available for you, the best training that you can get, and not to be, I don't want to say lazy, but in a way I was debating being lazy about it, which I'm really glad I wasn't. Maybe controversial, but what else you guys got?
That's a great point, Sean. That was actually very similar to what I forgot to say that I wanted to say. That's such a good point. Like, this is your time to learn. And yeah, it sucks. Like, nobody wants to work long hours or take in-house call and cover a lot of patients, but you have backup during your residency. You have people to help you. You're supposed to be learning. And so if you can find a program where it's rigorous, but you also have good support from your attendings, people that actually want to teach you, and a good educational environment where people actually the other residents also really want to learn, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to train. It's so important because this is your time to learn. After this, you're a physician, you're caring for people's lives. So you really, really important decision, which I don't want to like put a lot of pressure on people to like make the right decision, because at the end of the day, it is up to you, right? It's up to your, what you bring, how much you want to learn, how much you do on your own. But I think really just figuring out what your, non-negotiables are in a program. Sorry, and then going from there.
Any questions about how to pick program? Yeah, go ahead there.
Well, I was wondering, kind of piggying back off of what you're saying with like how you kind of network at conferences and stuff with AAP coming up and then AAP in the fall. What advice do you have for students going to those conferences on how they can kind of maximize the time there and take advantage of all the resources that are at those conferences?
Yeah, don't be shy. Introduce yourself, people. If you see me there and you see, I will help introduce you. Anything else about picking a program? I don't know if it's right for you. Everything sounds the same. You don't know how to pick, how to look good on your interviews. Anything you guys got?
How to look good
Do
on your
you feel like you
interviews.
have a grasp over, if you don't have a grasp over what PM&R is, and I didn't till I was a resident, like, don't be shy. It's like hard to characterize this whole specialty. I want you to know what's out there for you. In a way, if you don't know what you want to do, it's because field kind of works out because you can do so many broad things, but it's hard to explain to you in a nutshell what everything is. But please, I want to help you get the most out of this.
I got any questions?
How do you describe this specialty? I'm looking at chat. All your family and friends. Dude, because my parents don't. Okay, so if the worst part of a specialty is having to explain what it is, to me, that's a pretty good specialty. True. People are like, what's PM&R? Are you physical therapy? Are you physiatry? Are you a physicist? Yeah, like all that. I would rebrand this shit in a heartbeat. Don't get me started on that. But the name is what it is. Half the reason why I did spinal cord injuries is so I could stop saying I'm PM&R and just say I'm spinal. That's a joke. That's a joke. But if you do a specialty, a subspecialty, it's very easy to do. If you're general, you'll find your way to do it. Usually what we say if you're somebody who's general is that you do the medical rehabilitation for patients and whatever your niche is. For people if you're general, you say, I take care of the rehabilitate, all the medical issues that happen in rehabilitation, people who have strokes, transplants, LVADs, whatever that is. You'll find your way to say it and make it clear that you're not a physical therapist and, blah, blah, blah. If you do go a general route.
Yeah, that's how I explain it too. Is I say that, I'm the physician that takes care of patients when they leave the acute hospital and go to rehab. And then I'll say something exactly like Sean was saying. I take care of patients that have strokes, have spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, and people usually, I feel like, kind of understand that like general idea. But yeah, saying physiatrist is tough. Everyone thinks you mean a psychiatrist. You guys, I don't know if you've seen the Dr. Glockenflecken video where they make that mistake, but yeah, I agree with Sean. Like, and in the medical world, I would say, like, even just in my like time as in med school and residency, people have learned what PM&R is, like, a lot more. I think like the advocacy of this specialty has really gotten better. So more people kind of know what rehab is, I would say now, even than like 5 years ago. So
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, everybody has a bit of ego, right? I'm sure every neurosurgeon out there, when someone said, "What do you do?" I'm sure they puff up their chest before they say neurosurgery, right? I mean, everybody who goes to med school has a bit of an ego as well. I mean, this specialty, I think, as a baseline, if you take an average, has a little bit more modest overall. But like, yeah, I mean, are you gonna? I mean, will some of you feel a little bit of a sting that they're not going to recognize what you do right away, even though you went to medical school and you are a full doctor? I guess I would say, if the little sting that has compared with the quality of life that you have as a PM&R doctor, like, you make good money, you are a freaking doctor no matter what. Patients love you, and if your hours are better and you're making good money and you have that much more time to be with your spouse or kids or doing whatever the hell you want to do, staying fit, I will take people saying what's physiatry any day for all the perks that this specialty has, hands down. Am I selling this shit? I mean, I hope I'm selling this, but
not to mention the excellent coworkers, right, Sean?
yeah, dude, I swear, you will have a good time in residency. My residency at Northwestern is considered one of the more intense ones. Thank you, Nabila. It's considered one of the more intense ones. And like, oh no, I was there from 8 to 5:30 some days. Like, oh no, yeah, I was on call. Yeah, I had a decent number of overnight 24-hour call shifts. Yes, and I was the only resident in the rehab hospital. There was a peds floor. I had not seen peds since I was a third-year med student. Yeah, like that happens. But you, like Marla said, attendings give you their cell phones. They're like, the next day they're like, I'm like, I'm sorry, I paid you at 4 a.m. They're like, dude, Sean, I'm glad you called me. I would have been disappointed if you didn't call me. Like, that's what you're working with too. And if that's as bad as it gets, it's like pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. One last thing you should know. Not last. I mean, I keep saying that and I keep telling you more stuff. It's out of love though. For knowing what you're getting yourself into, there's a thing about standalone rehab hospitals and not standalone. I didn't know what that was. Some med student asked this on an interview trail, like, is this a standalone? And I was just like, what a fucking kiss ass. Like and I realized later, like, that was actually a fantastic question. I was just being a jerk in my own mind. Standalone rehab hospital is like Northwestern or sorry, Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, where the whole hospital is for PM&R, and you, as the important thing is, you as a resident there, there's no code team. You're not attached to another hospital. If there's a rapid response or a code, you are responsible for it. Now, it sounds terrifying, and I told you PM&R doesn't have the acute stuff. A code in PM&R means 911 gets called, and you just kind of like do basic stuff until they get there. Like, you are not handling, right? You just wait until they come and get the patient and just do the basic stabilizing stuff. But don't get too stressed out. Non-standalone, the perk of that is you get more comfortable with things, and nothing will phase you as an attending if you can do that stuff. And it's still not like you're an ICU resident. Non-standalone, an emergency team is there on site who will take care of those things, and often you'll do home call because they don't need a resident there in-house to do the emergencies because they got their own ICU team. That makes sense? So it depends what you're looking for.
I feel like I heard there aren't that many standalone.
Not as many, because it takes a lot of money to have a standalone rehab hospital. So the places that are standalone happen to be the most like prestigious or biggest, what more renowned places, because they have huge grants and they're known, like Tier in Texas or Craig in Colorado. They are like world famous rehabilitation places. So of course they're going to have great PM&R residency programs too. But not to say others are not great as well. It's just that's a unique kind of experience that, like, I feel like if you can get it and your place happens to do it, you come out a little bit tougher, but end up doing pain. It doesn't make a difference either way, I suppose. Don't discount what Marla said, though. Our sports attendings at Northwestern, they had to take a lot of places, like you said, they take call for the inpatients. So you can't just be like, oh, screw this. I'm just gonna skirt by my inpatient rotations. There's a decent chance if you're doing outpatient stuff, you might have to cover like one weekend a month or every other month at an inpatient stuff. So you got to keep up those skills, like Marla said.
Yeah, I think one thing we can I think we touched on a little bit, but is just kind of like the job opportunities afterwards. So I would say, like, in general, it's maybe pretty close to a 50-50 split, and those who do fellowship out of PM&R residency and those who don't is probably trending towards more people doing a fellowship than those that don't. But you certainly do not have to be fellowship trained to find jobs in PM&R market. Those that are more open to doing general physiatry especially, but also neuro rehab, meaning TBI and SCI primarily.
You guys know what those are? Sorry, because I didn't, Marla, when I was
good. Traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury. They tend to be a lot more job opportunities for those people. And so if you're like similar to Sean's situation where you really only want to live in Southern California, you're never going to find a sports job. The chances of finding a sports medicine job in Southern California are very slim. And there's just a ability to find that stuff is just a little bit slimmer. So just kind of keeping that in mind too. Pedro asked, could you describe a little bit more about what kinds of patients' diseases you see in spinal cord injury as opposed to general PM&R? It's an awesome question. So it really depends on the center that you're at, what they consider like a spinal cord injury. But in general, we see anything from like a traumatic spinal cord injury, meaning gunshot wounds, stabbings, falls is a really big one in our elderly population, to people with MS, that their MS is in the spinal cord, people with like transverse myelitis, weird stuff like that. And a whole breadth of like types of patients, meaning like different ages, kind of every kind of patient that you can imagine, because anybody can have a spinal cord injury. And then all breadths of severity of spinal cord injury. So somebody that has a spinal cord injury and very high up in their cervical spine and is ventilator dependent, can't move their arms or legs at all, to somebody that can still walk. We see kind of the whole breadth of that. And general PM&R, I don't know if it's really like as opposed to general PM&R. It's a really good question. But I think in general, I think medicine is moving towards putting really complicated patients with subspecialty trained doctors. So if somebody has like a high spinal cord injury and is on a vent, they're going to want a spinal cord injury doc to take care of them. Whereas a general physiatrist could easily take care of a person with MS, a person with transverse myelitis, and really someone with like paraplegia or something like that. But in general PM&R, like for inpatient, you're seeing like strokes, amputees, people with I'm trying to think, even like debility patients that have transplant, COVID rehab, all that kind of stuff. So it really just depends. It also depends on the program, because some programs won't have a spinal cord doc. So the general physiatrist will see more stuff like that.
Yeah, like in general, like Marla said, when you say general rehab, if you're talking about inpatient general rehab, it is like a lot of strokes, amputee, those are two big ones. And then with like general stuff is like people who have big surgeries, transplants, those LVADs, those like heart devices, or they have big ortho surgeries, like you think, like a hip or like two knees or something like that. Those are the kind of things that you'll see that are like not super subspecialized. There's no stroke specialty. Stroke falls under general. Spinal cord injury does, brain injury does, but stroke is just under general. And I hope you all know the fellowships in PM&R are all 1 year, except for pediatrics, which is 2, but that's pretty good. And I'll tell you thing about the next step and money and jobs and all that too. Like where I got a job in a lot of places, I got a 5.6% bonus in my salary because I'm fellowship trained. It just took 1 year of fellowship for me to get that. And when you're fellowship trained, you can do all the stuff a general person does, but in my eyes, it also opens up a whole market of other jobs that are not open to those generalists too. So if you do that, I view it as protect. It's like insurance for your job opportunities. And like I said, stacking the deck more in your favor. For just a year, that's no problem.
Totally.
What does like a typical day or week in the life of like a spinal cord fellow look like?
I think these questions are always so hard because we do rotations similar to what residents do. So it depends if you're on like an inpatient week or an outpatient week or what setting you're in. So Sean right now is at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center, which is this is getting super niche, but it's a model system for spinal cord injury. There's these model systems for spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, and burn rehab. You guys can Google it, but basically these are the better programs for these things. And so his day looks completely different from my day, which I'm on an outpatient rotation at the VA. But in general, I would say we probably work somewhere in the realm of like 9 to 4, 9 to 4:30, seeing patients, doing regular admin stuff. But I would say fellowship in general, you have a lot more free time, a lot more ability, like whatever your kind of interests are. Sean and I have some similar interests and some different interests, so it's nice because we're able to kind of bounce stuff off each other, but also kind of pursue, what we each are more interested in. But yeah, just a regular day would be something in the realm of like 8 or 9 to 4. In the outpatient side, seeing clinic patients, we don't see that much at the VA, and then doing some admin stuff. And then on the inpatient side, sort of similar things to what I'm sure you guys have seen, get here, pre-round, look over the patients, go see the patients. We have a little bit more freedom in fellowship in that we can see patients a lot of times by ourselves because we will be hopefully board certified here in the next couple of months. So we have a little bit more freedom for that, but really just depends on the rotation, which is not really a helpful answer.
It tends to be easier than your residency.
Yeah.
I think across the board, all of us feel that way. You want to pick a fellowship where you're not needed. That's the key. You don't want them to need a fellow to keep things running. You want them to be like, oh, you're here now. Okay, yeah. Like that's ideal. So you can just learn and not focus on being a resident another year. Question on for international students. Typically, this is a specialty that's been more friendly for international students. The thing is, as the secret gets out about PM&R every year, it's gotten more competitive, and it's kind of has edged out international students more as we have more domestic people going into it. So absolutely, still overall, it is a more friendly field, but every year that kind of gets a little bit harder and harder as the board scores go up and more applicants come in. And then the other question was, performing arts. Yeah, I think Mount Sinai is a big one. I think they changed their PM&R name to like human rehabilitation or something like that. Shirley Ryan, we have a keyboard. I'm a piano player. Since I was a kid, and I also thought it was cool because we had one of the doctors there who does like musicians, and like there's a keyboard there, a full keyboard with weighted keys, which I always appreciated, and she would have them play to like show what hurts. I thought that was pretty cool too. That I don't have a full list for you, but there are plenty out there. If you search PM&R performing arts on Google, I think you'll get a list of programs just through the results and kind of filter that way. And it's also a great question to ask on your interview trail, unless you get an awkward no and they're, but it's like sucks. I would maybe ask the residents first before you ask the program director, because you still want to look good to that program.
I think it's also important though, like even if they don't have it, that they would be willing to find a way to incorporate it. So like a lot of programs, there's flexibility. Like I know at Georgetown, like we had a resident that was super into global health, and our program director like created a global health track for her. and now it's available to all the residents. But like, if you're super interested and that's what you want to do, you should be figuring out a program that not only has it available, but is willing to kind of do what they have to make sure that you get the education that you want.
Great point. Yeah.
My own personal story for the foreign medical student question. So my entire class at Georgetown was either DOs or foreign medical grads. So it's definitely possible, but definitely making sure that you really do just have to have your kind of dot your I's and cross your T's a little bit better than everybody else, and that's just the reality of the situation. But it's definitely possible in PM&R. And if you're having a hard time, maybe look at some of the newer programs because they may be a little bit more receptive. There's always new PM&R programs that are popping up, so they may just be a little bit more receptive if you're having a hard time. But I can't imagine you would, and that would honestly really be super annoying if we heard that that was happening.
The question about, let's see, in that last one that came in here, advocacy. You know how we said there's two main big PM&R organizations, AAP, and the other one is, which is, oh my God, what is it? Academy of Academic Physiatrists. The other one is AAPM&R. That one's easy enough, right? AAPM&R, if you sign up for their newsletter, that they are the organization that focuses more on advocacy. You sign up for their newsletter, like every week you get something, and they're talking about different things, like we're advocating for this policy, like right to here. They kind of feed you things like that if you want to get involved too. It actually it's great you're interested in doing that. And also we talked about ways to show you're interested in PM&R if you don't have a home program and it can be a bit challenging. That's a great way to do it as well, which you can work a personal statement into, and was great interview fodder. So
For sure.
very keen eye there. Yeah.
And some residency programs will have, again, like tracks or ways for you to get involved. So definitely like reaching out, talking to the residents, seeing what's available within the programs. But there's got to be like a committee in AIPM&R where they want med students to join that can be really related to like health policy and advocacy. So definitely check AIPM&R out.
And even AAP, which I feel like I'm like selling it now because I'm on that right now. But AAP has a lot of med student committees. They take a lot of people. I wish you guys were on my social media one. I'm not gonna lie, it would be really nice to have you guys there. That's a great way to like show interest and have leadership. Both of those cross together. Some of them, like there's a diversity and equity inclusion one. You'll come up with a project that year, and you can have your voice heard and do things that qualify as advocacy through AAP as well, through those subcommittees. You can do that through wellness subcommittee. There are a lot of the wellness committees. You can spin it towards that if you want. And assuming you have a good resident fellow who's like leading that, they will let you do that and I'm not going to lie. They want you to take initiative there. If you're a student on there who takes initiative, they're not going to be like, no, they're going to be like, please do that. And you will also work your way up to probably being somebody who will get chosen on the resident fellow committee when the time comes to. If you do have your eyes set on being a leader in the field and making a name for yourself, and also looking really nice and sexy for resident fellowship applications later.
So you guys have like fellows from different specialties that come and chat with you guys.
Yeah, we've been trying to hit like the main fellowships first.
Nice.
So we did neuro rehab and then sports. We have a spine one coming up. So just trying to kind of showcase the breadth of PM&R. Pretty amazing how many different things you can do.
Yeah.
I think it's a really creative way to do it, to have like the fellows come back, and because once you're kind of like siloed into like these different specialties, but I think it's a cool way for you guys to see like because of course when you're in med school you're super worried about like what residency you're gonna get, but this is about getting your career, like what you're gonna be doing for the rest, like however many decades long you're gonna be doing it. And so I think it's a really cool idea that you guys kind of have the fellows that are maybe a little bit more like, okay, this is kind of what I see my practice as now, because it can change so much in residencies. That's a really cool idea. And I mean, there's so many like Sean made such a good point at the beginning of this. PM&R, it's such a weird thing to learn as a med student because it's so broad. And so you're always like, what is PM&R? What's the difference between what this guy does and what you do? Why can I work in 12 different settings and have the same degree? And that's the confusing and difficult part of when you're trying to like get through med school and figure out what you want to do. But it's the beauty of it when you actually get into it, because even if what you had initially thought, I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor, I wanted to be on the field, I wanted to travel with teams, like that's what I thought my life was going to be. And then once I saw that, I was like, this is terrible. I do not want to do this at all. Like, I love neuro rehab, and this is just like perfect. I get everything I want out of this. But in some specialties, like if Sean had picked dermatology, like what if he didn't like skin diseases? Like there's nothing you can do. Like that's why PM&R can be so great, and you can really practice in any setting that you want. You can even do consults in an acute care ICU if that's what you like. Like you can do anything. And so just to say, I think it's cool that you guys are doing it with the fellows, and it's a cool approach to it. But keep your mind open. Like if you think that rehab might be exciting for you, but you're not exactly sure where you fit in, you're not the only one in PM&R that didn't know exactly where they wanted to fit in initially, and just kind of like found a home somewhere.
Anybody have any other questions I want to ask? All right.
Again, our emails are there too, so you can save those. And if you think you want to do this later, say, "Hey, I was from that session. Just quote this one. I'll remember this time," and we'll be happy to give you some tips later.
Well, thank you all so much for y'all's time. I know I learned a ton. I'm sure everyone else did as well. So we really appreciate y'all coming to hang out with us, and wish y'all the best in y'all's kind of next steps too.
Thanks, guys. Yeah,
Thank you all for taking the time to get to know us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck in whatever you do.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thanks for everything, y'all. Have a good one.
Go
Bye.
Birds.